Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Layne Fortenberry. He's the CEO at Grainster.com. Layne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. When we talked a while ago, what you guys are doing is really interesting to me, and I always kind of love companies that are bringing technology into industries that haven't traditionally been known to have technology. And I think what appealed to me about having you on the show is the fact that, I think a lot of people have experience in industries that, don't have technology, and that they could potentially be the one to bring technology into that industry. And so that's kind of the big reason that I really wanted to have you on the show. And I think, you guys are doing something really cool. But maybe before we kind of get into Grainster itself, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Okay. So I was born in Paragould, Arkansas, and moved to Greenville, Mississippi. My dad was in the rice industry, and that's how I can know about ag. So I moved to Greenville, Mississippi, and he worked for American Rice for a long time there in Greenville, Mississippi. So I actually grew up in Greenville, graduated high school, and went to college there in Mississippi, and then moved to San Antonio for a little while, and then moved back to Little Rock. And my dad actually bought the mill that he was running from American Rice in 1999. So that was my real first experience in agriculture. I had been around agriculture for years and years, just growing up. Uncles were farmers, grandfathers were farmers. My dad was in the rice milling industry for forever, so I was around ag for a long time. But actually going to work in the ag industry was in 1999 when my dad bought the mill. And so kind of, it's always been in the startup environment as well, and more of the brick and mortar on that side. But I've always been in the startup business. So just recently moved from Little Rock, worked for my parents for 14 years, I believe. In August of 2014, I left to start Grainster, and actually I moved out to Sacramento with my family now to pursue Grainster. So in a nutshell, that's my life.
Sure. No, I think it's interesting, right? Just kind of how people came to be where they are now. I'm curious though, did you go to university at all, and what did you take?
I did. I went to Delta State University, and then actually finished my degree. Got an associate's degree in general education. So, just most of my experience actually comes from the real world and from working in the industry and seeing the disconnect between farmers and end users.
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I kind of like the fact that that's kind of your background a bit, because I think you don't necessarily have to have all this like crazy background to do kind of what you guys are doing, right? And like obviously you've been in the industry, you grew up in it, but like your education doesn't really, like, it applies, but it's kind of loosely related, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's, like I said, it really comes from real world experience.
Sure.
And kind of getting to know the farmer, and that's what it was all about.
Sure, and I think that's inspiring, right? There's a lot of people that have that real world experience, and could potentially turn it into their own startup. So I'm curious. Then you moved to Sacramento. Was there a reason you moved there and you couldn't do it kind of elsewhere in the country, or what was your main reason to move to Sacramento?
Well, okay, so we started Grainster in 2014, and I raised a little money in Arkansas, and it's just that moved out to Sacramento to continue the dream, to pursue funding, just to pursue Sacramento through lots and lots of research. Turns out to be the up and coming ag tech capital of the world. So
cool.
Still working on it. Yeah. So it's a lot of it's farm to fork kind of thing, but with Silicon Valley being so close, and then the Central Valley, it just kind of turns out to be a perfect triangle for ag tech. So it just makes sense to move out here and pursue my dream.
Sure. No, that's awesome. So what is Grainster, and kind of how did the idea come to be?
Okay, so Grainster simply it's a grain trading platform that allows farmers to sell directly to the end users. Now, how Grainster came to be, I had the idea almost 10 years ago now.
Okay.
I was working for my parents at the rice mill, and as a family-owned rice mill, you do many different jobs. So one of my jobs was actually buying rice from the farmers, and then we'd mill it and sell it to the end users. So I could see the disconnect, even from the farmers to a local rice mill. A lot of them thought they had to go through a broker, and that just simply wasn't true. So just could see the disconnect there. And then once we milled the rice, like I said, I also sold it to the end users, and rarely did I ever sell to the end user, I guess. I would always sell to brokers, and then that would go to another broker and another broker and another broker. So just being in the business, I could see the disconnect between the farmer and the end user. And, it transfers from rice to corn to wheat to soybeans, whatever commodity it is. There's always a producer and always an end user. And then there's in my opinion, an archaic section in between there that gets it to it. So yeah, that's how I came up with the idea, just being in the real world, like we're talking about, and seeing the disconnect.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And by end user, do you mean the consumer, correct?
Not exactly,
Okay.
because what we're talking about is bulk grain. So
okay.
bushels and bushels, truckloads, train loads, barges, ships, even to that extent. So,
wow.
Yeah, we say end user, so. And it depends on what commodity you're talking about. If you talk about rice, obviously rice has to be milled. So, a rice mill could be the end user. But what we're really propping our business model up on is international business. So, the farmers have been selling to the same 3 or 4 buyers in their local area, and it just makes sense to them because those are the buyers. So those buyers only have to be better than each other price-wise. So, that's not hard to do. But once you start getting out of the boundaries of the United States, and so there are buyers all over the world, especially in rice, because most of our rice is exported to the United States. So just for example, in Central America, they have their own rice mills down there. So the farmer can theoretically ship directly to the Central American rice mills and cut everybody else out in the middle. So that's really what we're going after.
Okay, so how do you guys kind of go about actually recruiting kind of farmers? Because you must have tons of connections based on your past kind of family job, or did you kind of have to go, kind of hustle this again, or kind of walk me through that process?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge, and obviously, we have a bigger following in Arkansas and the Mid-South because that's where we're from, and
Sure.
Like you said, those are the connections to the farmers that we have. But we want this thing to be available to farmers worldwide. So, we've used social media. Facebook, I think we're nearing 6,000 followers on Facebook.
Wow.
Just a lot of social media is really what we did. And, I'm pretty proud of the presence that we have and the branding that we've done for Grainster with the amount of investment that we've had. So I've had a lot of help in that situation. But we've done a lot with just through social media and just like a grassroots effort, really. So
Okay.
that's kind of, and that kind of speaks to what the farmers want too, because they're all jumping on board and waiting for this to be produced and just a worldwide network of buyers and sellers. So it's encouraging to have the large following on Facebook and and other social medias and just you're an online company, so you really are after the people that are online. So we kind of stick to the digital marketing is what we do. But also, like I said, a lot of grassroots and a lot of word of mouth and just been lucky to have the success that we've had so far.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious on the Facebook kind of social media side of things. Did you guys actually buy advertising on Facebook, or did you kind of figure out ways to connect with people and kind of grow your audience kind of for free? Or
A little bit of both. We bought
Okay.
a little bit early on to kind of get that boost going. I think we spent something like $15 a month. So not a ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even when we were actually buying that, we didn't spend a lot of money on that. So, but once we got a core group there, then it was really just kind of people sharing it and us making posts and keeping the site active, or the page active. So really, we probably paid for maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks, something like that.
Oh,
But the
wow.
rest of it was just, the rest of it was just organic. So,
But I think that's super important, right, to mention, because like that's how I grew the show, is all through kind of most of mine has kind of been through Twitter and Facebook and some LinkedIn. But I think it's also important to kind of stress to other people out there listening that, you guys spent a pretty insignificant amount of money to grow just on Facebook, and to your point of just keeping content relevant and whatnot. And once you get to a certain level, it kind of just snowballs on its own a little bit, and you don't really have to put in a bit of effort. Like, you have to put in effort kind of at the beginning and kind of ongoing a little bit, but you don't
yeah.
have to spend as much time kind of ongoing as I think a lot of people think, right? Or spend tens of thousands of dollars on this stuff to get going.
That's right. Yeah, by no means. Yeah. So, I can remember back when 2 years ago when we first started paying. So we were probably, I guess, we got up to the level through paid advertisements to about 400 or 500.
Sure.
But just like you said, that snowball effect kicked in after that, and I mean, it just grew rapidly from 500 to the 5,500, just without even trying. Really, I don't know how to say that, but it was just organic, and people were just sharing it. And like I said, that's really encouraging as an entrepreneur to see that feedback on the social media side. So, yeah, I would suggest you need to do a little paid advertising up front, and then just kind of let that thing post if you have a really good idea, and that'll almost be your proof of concept.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome advice. So let's kind of dive a little bit into, or deeper into, kind of exactly what Grainster does. Like, kind of walk me through as if like I'm the farmer, like, to kind of into the platform. Like, how does the whole thing kind of work?
Gotcha. So you go to the website and say you're a farmer and you have, let's just use 10,000 bushels of corn.
Sure.
So you go to the website, and it actually works two ways, but let me go through this way first. So
Yeah, and then we'll cover the other side.
If you're a farmer, yeah, exactly. So if you're a farmer, you go and it's a paid membership, $500 a year,
Okay.
and actually it's free right now, but that's our model is $500 a year. You get a limited time for free. But anyway, so you go in there, you post your bushels that you have, the 10,000 bushels of corn, and through profit-based farming, you should realize that what your return on your investment is. So, if all your land costs, your input, your seed costs, your fertilizers, all that, take that and then decide what kind of return on your investment you want. So if that's 20%, then you just do the math and you figure out that this is the price that you need. So then you post that on the website. We have a negotiation button back and forth. So a buyer from around the world sees that you're selling 10,000 bushels of corn. Well, he can come in and he can negotiate and make an offer on that. So say, let's just use an arbitrary number, say $5 a bushel. I think it's more like $3.50 right now, but let's use $5 a bushel.
Sure.
It's what you're asking for it. And the buyer from around the world says, I'll give you $4.50. Well, then you can negotiate back, and it's just a back and forth until you both come up to a number that you agree on. Let's just say it's $4.75. Well, then you both confirm that $4.75, and then you're taken into our transaction engine, which is being developed right now. And at the same time, the logistics model, which we have logistics partners, both brick and mortar and online logistics models as well, that are partners with us. So then you get the process going. So you've made a deal, and now it has to be shipped. And that, the terms are, do you want it all shipped at once, or do you need it, shipped 2,000 bushels a month, or whatever that may be. So you guys have to figure that out between the buyer and the seller, or on our platform. And then the actual shipping comes through freight forwarders and, like I mentioned, the partners that we have right now. And we are developing our own logistics platform at the same time. But what the farmers always want to know, and rightfully so, is how do we get paid? So
Sure.
What we're really working on right now is a transaction engine that's going to allow the farmers, basically like a big PayPal,
Gotcha.
but it'll allow the farmers to know, especially if they're selling across borders, sometimes that makes them feel insecure because they don't know how they're going to get paid. So
Right.
we'll act as an intermediate there, and the buyer, when the farmer ships the grain, the buyer will wire the money to us, and then once the buyer receives the grain, then the money is passed on to the farmer. So it's always held in a safe, secure location, and the farmers are assured they're going to get paid. So that's a big deal to them.
Sure. I can
But
imagine.
but yeah, and so I guess and it works on the other side too. So buyers can post their needs. So if a buyer needs 10,000 bushels of corn again, then he can post that, and farmers can go and match up the other way, and so they can say, and the negotiation works just the same, but it's just the buyers can post their needs, and the farmers can fill those needs. So it works both ways. This is what I'm saying, but yeah, that's in the short, that's how it works. So.
Okay. No, that's very cool. And this might be a really dumb question because I don't really know much about kind of the actual farming process itself. But how, like, okay, I have this, say, corn to sell, or to your point a few minutes ago. How soon before I actually harvest it do I need to post that online? Or if somebody requests it, do I say like, oh, I'll have a crop ready in like a week or 6 weeks, or how does that kind of work?
Well, I would say the sooner the better. So it's called forward contracting. It's really what it's called. But I'd say the sooner the better because, at harvest time, you don't want to get on there and sell at harvest time necessarily because that's when the most supply is available. And so the prices get pushed down at harvest time. It just happens
Right.
every year. So, if you're looking at your inputs and your profit-based farming, then say sometime before you even put your crop in the ground, you can start looking at prices. So it all
Okay.
depends on each farmer. So, you could say in February, you already have your inputs in and, now you're ready to plant your crop. So you could go ahead and start booking that in. And now, there's chances of crop failure and things like that. So, beyond crop insurance, you probably don't want to book everything that you have in, but a percentage of what you have in, and then kind of make sure once you get further in the season, come back again and book the rest of it. And when you're sure, fairly sure that you're going to, what quantity you're going to produce. So the answer is you should probably split it up, but every farmer's, different reasons they sell at different times. So
Sure.
that's how it, in a perfect world, it would, you would sell a percentage before you ever even put your crop in the ground, sell another percentage while you have a crop that has a good stand, and then maybe even a smaller percentage at harvest time, just to, what your overages are. So that's kind of how it lays out.
No, I got you. And I guess over time, as like your platform evolves, you could almost suggest to the farmer based on their location geographically, it might be time to plant this type of crop because it'll be ready in this, I don't know, in X amount of weeks or months or whatever, however long it takes to grow. And then you basically say like, you will get the best return on your investment because based on last year's statistics, there was a shortage of X crop this month, like stuff like that. Are you guys kind of thinking about?
Yeah, that would fall underneath our analytics program.
Okay.
So, so you put the three pieces, the major pieces together, and you have, which are the trading platform, the logistics platform, and the transaction engine. And then once you have those going, those are your core pieces. Once you have those going, then you can produce analytics, which are all content driven. And just like you're saying, farmers can use that information to project what they're going to plant for next year or what price they're going to sell for, many different things. And beyond that, beyond the farmer, there are tons of people that would like to have that cash grain information from around the world as well. Say bankers, futures traders, crop insurance companies. So lots of people would like to have that information. But even more exciting than the analytics, so once you put all three of those pieces together, then we can produce what we call a food safety program. So we can track the seed from the seed, because there's lots of information that you can get for farm management software, that you can get the information from the seed to the bin. But once it leaves that farmer's bin, and before it gets to the processor, there's some paper trails and things like that, scale tickets, but it's pretty archaic. So once we digitalize that, then we can complete the piece that makes that food safety program, which the world really badly needs right now. And and actually USAID and other entities are calling for it. So pretty excited about the marketing piece. And in my opinion, that's the missing piece. That's what everybody's missing. It's that marketing piece, because that's where you lose track of it. Because the farmer has a good hold on it from, where the seed that he bought. He can track it, what inputs he put on it, all the way to the bin, like I said. But once you put it on a truck or a train, you lose track of it to a large extent. So we have solutions to figure out how to complete a food safety program.
Sure, and once it leaves the country too, right? It's probably even more difficult to track. Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And it's still today, there are a lot of handwritten lot numbers, and it's put on a pallet or something like that, and those papers fly away. Tons of things can happen in transit. So a digital copy, even be able to track who the truck driver was, what the pit master's name was, just all kinds of information in there that would be handy to have as a recall or a food safety program / a recall program, traceability program, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's a pretty exciting aspect of it that a lot of people are keying in on.
Sure, and I think even like the consumer, there seems to be like a really big growing demand for people wanting to know exactly where their food came from. Not everybody, but I think a lot more people are actually being more conscious, or they really like kind of locally grown stuff, or like the truly organic stuff. And if it's not kind of locally grown, they'd like to know kind of exactly where their stuff or their meals and food are from, right?
Right, and yeah, it's all consumer driven. You're exactly right. So our ultimate end user, you asked that question earlier, but our ultimate end user is the consumer. Now, we may not be selling directly to the consumer,
sure,
but they're the ones that are driving these entities to come up with food safety programs, because the consumer wants to know, you're exactly right, where their food came from.
But
and,
I also, sure, I also think, and like it could just be me kind of fascinated by this, but if I went out for dinner somewhere and I ordered, I don't know, like steak and rice and potatoes, or well, it doesn't really matter, right? If it literally, like, even if it was on an app or something, that it would tell me like your meat's from like this farm located here and your rice is like from this farm located, like, I don't know. I think that would be very cool. And I obviously, like, you guys probably aren't, there yet, but I think like you could get there, and it's just something that always kind of fascinated me, right? Like, I would love to know that stuff. I get it's not really relevant to anything. It doesn't really change anything, but it's kind of fascinating, right? And there's a lot of people that do care about that, but I think even just from kind of like well, that's pretty cool. Like, this was here, I'm eating this from there, right?
That's right, yeah. And so we always use the analogy of a box of cereal. So if you have a QR code on the back of a box of cereal, scan that, and then it gives you the trail of the grain that's in that cereal all the way back to the seed, basically. So you could almost say you're tracking it from the seed in the ground all the way to the stomach. So that's a complete cycle. Yeah. So that is fascinating, and it's just you're right. It's just neat to know where your food came from.
Yeah, and then I think even just from like an allergy point of view too, for people, right, to track some of that stuff.
Yeah, and and it gets beyond that too. So if there's aflatoxin in the corn or whatever it is, and they don't catch it on the outbound shipment, then it's caught on the inbound. Then there's a way to track that back and trace that back and put it in the lots and do something with that corn and not serve it to the public. So with a dangerous toxin in it. So it gets to be actually a food safety program pretty quick. So it can do lots of good for the world.
Sure. And then you're also kind of cutting out a bunch of middlemen, or potentially cutting out a bunch of middlemen, correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we're going directly from the farmer to the end user. So, there's industry in the middle, and that's what they do, is they just connect those, and and they're, in my opinion, making a lot of the profit that the farmers are deserve, and they just don't have the marketing arm that these guys have, or just don't know the people that these guys know, really, the way it works now. So just trying to supersede that old model and put a new model in place.
Yeah, I love that idea of that you guys are kind of bringing technology to this archaic kind of market that hasn't been known to be that tech savvy, right? Like, obviously they have all the heavy equipment and whatnot, but from kind of a actual tracking and monetization and kind of marketing side, like, I love that you guys are doing that. And so, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, yeah, they have lots of equipment on the that's up to date and futuristic almost, from the tractor side, the satellite imagery and all that. But nobody's really attacking the marketing side. And so, yeah, that's what we're excited about, to be kind of be the front runners in the marketing side and get this thing out there for the farmers.
Sure. So I'm also curious, are you guys doing or going to eventually do kind of anything related to kind of like the animal side of the farming?
Yeah, we're open. Our goal is to get these first 4 big crops, the big 4 that I call them,
Okay.
Rice, wheat, corn, and soybeans, to get the model perfected on those, and then we can open up channels for anything from corn, from coffee to to bananas, to hogs, whatever it may be. So yeah, we can open it up to several different commodities. And once you start getting into those commodities, you might want to look. We're thinking about looking at custom software and maybe develop the type of platform for those different. Now, let me just give you an example. So in the cattle world, auctioning is the way it's done.
Sure.
So we'll look at making an auction platform for the cattle world. Now, grain farmers, they don't necessarily want to sell their grain in auction, because it's kind of auctions to them are kind of a negative thing. But to cattle farmers, that's how they buy their cattle all the time. So
Sure.
At that point, we'll start looking at different customizable software and what the market calls for, and just kind of follow what the people are saying.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And then obviously you open up markets kind of globally, right? So like you could have farmers in all parts of the world, right, on your platform, shipping their product globally.
Yeah, that's exactly the goal, and that's what the business model is completely propped up on, is intercontinental exchange of grain. So opening up markets, like I said earlier, just not having the same 3 or 4 people to sell to, having the world to sell to. So that greatly increases your marketing arm.
Sure. And I know like kind of in the coffee and like tea space, people really care where their kind of stuffs or their coffee or tea's kind of coming from, and they really care about being fair to the farmers. And I think what I like about your guys' platform is you're kind of doing that to the rest of the farming industry, right? And I get you could still do to tea and coffee, but that's
Sure,
that's kind of started already. But I think to your point, like
nobody's did a lot for that.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I think it's cool that you guys are bringing this to kind of the other areas of farming that maybe aren't as kind of trendy as like coffee and tea, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. So your cereal is not nearly as trendy as coffee or tea, but and we talked about this earlier, that people are beyond the coffee and tea, really just want to know where their food comes from. So yeah, that's what we're after. Is it's been that way for coffee farmers for a while now. Fair trade has been around for a while, but for the grain farmers, even the produce farmers, for all the other farmers around the world that, like you said, aren't as trendy as coffee, they deserve a fair shake too. So yeah, that's what we're trying to extend it to everyone and basically create fair trade around the world.
Sure. So are you having any hurdles training kind of, I would consider, and I don't mean this in a mean negative way, that farmers aren't traditionally known to be the most tech savvy. I'm sure some are, some aren't, kind of some are in the middle.
Sure.
Are you having kind of any trouble? And if you are, kind of talk about how do you go kind of bridging that gap between adding technology into an industry that isn't really known for being kind of that tech savvy?
Yeah. Well, the generational shift is playing a huge benefit in our favor.
Okay.
So from generational shift, I mean the younger sons, the younger daughters are actually coming into the farming and taking over from the 60, 65, 70-year-old dad.
Got you.
And he's given the power to the kids, basically. So these kids have grown up, around technology and on their smartphones all the time. So it's a whole lot easier. So the generational shift has helped us. Say 10 years ago when I had the idea, we weren't ready for this.
Sure.
And, this just wasn't possible back then. But now the generational shift is coming in, and you hear the average age of a farmer going up and up, 65, 67, somewhere around there. But these kids are coming in and taking over, and that's helped us out a lot. So, these guys are willing to look at different marketing aspects and different marketing ideas, and selling online is not nearly as scary to them because, I'm sure they bought something from Amazon or whatever, eBay or whatever. So, they're pretty used to it and they trust the internet. So that's helped us out greatly. I'd say the generational shift is our biggest, one of our biggest allies.
Sure. So I'm kind of curious then, are you guys just going to be an online platform? Are you guys going to build kind of Android and iOS apps, or is it still kind of up in the air a little bit?
Yeah, we'll have apps eventually. We're decided not to focus on that right now and just get the process nailed down and perfected. But yeah, we will definitely have apps and probably beyond that as well eventually.
So you kind of mentioned this earlier. You guys raised some money kind of at the beginning. Are you guys still kind of looking to raise money? Where are you guys kind of at in that kind of funding area?
So yeah, I self-funded early on
Okay.
to get it off the ground, and then I had an angel investor come in, but almost 2 years ago now. Pretty sure we have another angel round coming in fairly soon, and after that, we're going to kind of reconfigure and be ready for our Series A round of funding. So that's what we're gearing up for right now is our Series A. And that's part of the reason I moved out to Sacramento.
Sure. Okay. Did you have any connections in Sacramento or not really? Just you mentioned before it's kind of an up and coming agricultural kind of hotspot, but did you know anybody there, or you kind of just moved there knowing it's kind of up and coming?
Yeah, just kind of moved here. Through Facebook and social media, loosely know some people in the area and they can kind of guide you, just coming into a new area. But on the bigger part, we didn't really know anybody out here. So I moved my wife and three young daughters out here. So lots of people thought we were crazy, but you got to do what you got to do. And we just did a lot of research, and we were at a point in Arkansas where we had sold our house, and we thought, okay, so where in the world? And we just really literally stepped back and said, where in the world would be the best spot for us? So we looked at Fayetteville, Arkansas. We looked at different places around the country, just kind of as startup hubs, and ag tech world is a little different. Just because it's a startup hub doesn't mean it's necessarily good for the ag tech.
Gotcha.
And we've learned that over the years. But just through research and just figuring out where in the world would be the best for Grainster. And so we came to Sacramento, California. Obviously, Silicon Valley has a lot of ag tech companies, and it's hot out there right now. But you kind of get lost in that as well. And I really like the feel of Sacramento. The farm to fork is one of their slogans of the city. They've got this entity called Greater Sacramento that's recruiting companies to come to the Sacramento area, even from the Bay Area, and they're having success. So, and they're just positioned perfectly here in the Central Valley with rice to the north and produce and nuts and all kinds of, California is the fifth largest economy in the world. So, agriculture is a big deal here. So, and they're strategically located with Silicon Valley still, some opening satellite offices in Sacramento. Like I said, the agriculture world here, it's kind of turning out to be the perfect storm for ag tech here in Sacramento, I think. So we wanted to get out here in the middle of it, and that's what we did.
No, I think that's awesome. And kind of why I asked the question is because I think a lot of people are kind of, in the space where you were like a while ago before you decided to just up and move to a new state, right? And I think that can be scary, right? To leave a job, to start a startup, to move across the country, right? And you did it. But I'm curious then to know what advice you would give to somebody that's kind of was in your shoe or is in your shoes that you were in a few years ago before you decided to kind of leave a job, do a startup, move across the country. Like, what advice do you have for people? Like you mentioned, kind of do your research and whatnot and pick an area that,
yeah.
But do you have any other kind of advice for people that are looking to do or thinking about doing something similar like you did a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, at the core, it would be just do it. Follow your dreams, because, I mean, you never want to ask what if. I mean, that's going to be the worst question that haunts you for the rest of your life. What if I would have done this, So I just say just do it. Just follow your dreams. Make sure that it is your dream first, but then and do your research, whether it's ag tech or whatever it may be. Do your research on where you should be, where the best place in the world for you to be, and then go for it. That's it's as simple as that. And it sounds simple now, but back when even back to when I first contracted to build the first platform for Grainster, that was kind of the stepping off point. After that, it's just kind of, you do whatever's best for the company and just, you don't think too much about it, but you just do whatever's best for the company. So that first step off point is actually when you contract to do whatever you're going to do, or take that first step, whatever that looks like for you. And so just, all I can say is just do it. Go for it. If it's your dream, go for it.
Sure. And I'm obviously you got the support from kind of your wife and whatnot moving across the country.
Yeah, it was actually, we kind of came up with it almost at the same time, but individually. So it wasn't a hard sell. It was kind of almost her idea. So yeah, she actually is one of the majority owners of the company. So she's been heavily involved in Grainster all along. And at the very least, back in, the 10 years, a sounding board for me to say, oh, that's crazy, or yeah, that sounds like it might work. So yeah, she's been heavily involved in Grainster, and she's a big supporter of the move to Sacramento.
Sure. I think that's super important, right? To have somebody that's kind of, whether it's a spouse or significant other or kind of family and friends to support kind of, for lack of a better term, almost your crazy idea, right? Like my wife supported my crazy ideas with the show and a handful of other things that I'm kind of involved in. So, I think that's important to kind of stress that it's nice to have that kind of sounding board and support system, right? Because I think in a lot of cases, nobody would be able to do what they do if they don't have that. And at least in my experience, anyway.
No, it makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it has made the whole process of Grainster, which, like I said, she's been heavily involved for the last 10 years. So none of it was really a surprise. She kind of saw it all coming, I guess. But yeah, I couldn't have done it without her, without the support of my parents and my parents-in-law, and just a number of people, my business partners, all the Grainster team. It's without all their support, it doesn't really do anything, or it never gets off the ground. It's kind of flops. So you absolutely need the support of your community, your friends, your families. So yeah, absolutely helps, or is vital, I would say.
Sure. No, that's awesome. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about Grainster and any other kind of social media links you want to mention that people can go check out. Okay.
Yeah. So you can go to Grainster.com or Grainster.market. And the platform's not up right now, but there is a lot of information on the website kind of explaining what we're doing with the transaction engine and our vision to a certain extent as well. So Grainster.com or Grainster.market, and then also follow us on Facebook at Grainster at Facebook.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. And, I can't wait to see where you guys go with this thing.
Awesome, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Perfect, man. All right. You have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.